Speaking of Game Pass, didn't the Diablo 4 director say that there were no plans for D4 to come to Game Pass? What do you think, Chris? Is it coming?
So Blizzard doesn't have a history of putting all their games in Game Pass, and that's fine, right? World of Warcraft is never going to Game Pass. However, the conflicting statement is that Phil Spencer, who's in charge of Xbox, promised when Game Pass first launched that all Microsoft-owned games would be in Game Pass day and date of launch and remain in Game Pass for the life of the game. So, for as long as Activision Blizzard is not owned by Microsoft, which may be forever, that's a valid, interesting statement. Good to know. Never coming to Game Pass. If that becomes suddenly owned by Microsoft, then I believe Phil Spencer's words would overwrite that.
Yes. And Eth
because they would become first party.
Eth says yes, that it will. If Microsoft closes on the deal, it's coming. Why is there no plans? Because they haven't closed. You don't make plans also in this case. And they might not close. But if they do close and that deal goes through, yes. Now, will the seasonal updates, like is everything in Diablo going to be included in Game Pass? No. I think they're just going to remove that barrier for entry of that initial price offering because Microsoft is buying Activision Blizzard to fund and funnel more content into Game Pass to make Game Pass I'm always going to be subscribed to this service. Why wouldn't I be? Because we're seeing already with the impact of the Game Pass that like mid-core kind of games, well, even AAA, you would consider maybe AAA games.
Is the ESO subscription even discounted for Game Pass? I think it's still full price. I don't think they say
no. Yeah, they don't.
They just get the base game.
Yeah,
which I think was in there before it closed. So when ZeniMax got bought, I think that was still just. I think it was still just like you still have to pay. So I don't think it changed ESO players at all.
Yeah, they haven't changed ESO. I think you have
base game is included base Game Pass.
And they have perks. Like one of the things about having Game Pass is you can claim a perk for the various different games, just like with Amazon, Prime Gaming, they have that same kind of thing. Like, hey, this month's Prime Gaming, you click a thing, you link this, whatever, and you get whatever. And so that essentially is going on. Now, when we talk about blocking the sale, like all the lawsuits and all that things are being fought, in court as expected. I do feel that, from everything I've read and listening to the lawyers who've been covering the case, like Microsoft has a strong case because the forces being brought against them is also doing the same various things, but they're just like, we do assume, we do kind of theorize.
Deal with Nintendo.
Yeah.
Because Sony said they're going to take Call of Duty away from us. And they haven't told us that they're not willing to write a contract with us saying they won't. And Microsoft said, if we had a contract saying that we wouldn't make a game exclusive, that would be good. All right. We just signed one with Nintendo.
And everybody
shoved it in Sony's face.
Well, and they've offered that to Sony, and Sony is rejected. So at the end of the day, I don't think it's going to be something that's like an easy close, but it's still, I think, probably more or less trending to being closed, because what they do is within those lawsuits, they come back with basically recommendations, and everybody's going to have different things. And at the end of the day, it's just basically costing Microsoft more and more money to get this deal closed. They want to get it closed. I know people who own Activision Blizzard, they want to get it closed, and then they'll just kind of go from there. But we'll have to wait and see. If it doesn't close, it will be a fascinating thing. And yeah, they don't Activision Blizzard still its own complete separate entity, waiting to see what ultimately happens with it. And if it doesn't close, then yeah, I don't think you'll see Diablo 4 or any Activision Blizzard in Game Pass. But if it does, I could see something as a part of these contracts that they'll keep Call of Duty, because that's the real kind of key point there, out of Game Pass for a little while. But at some point, they're going to want to have that all in place, ready to rock and roll.
And there could be a ton of stipulations put on this as it struggles its way through the US and EU, and they go through any appeals process and any of that. I don't know the exact status as of today, but there could be all sorts of, you have to have this performance, and if you don't, this has to be sold off. And there can be all these different rules that say we're only going to let this go through under the following criteria, because letting it go through with no criteria is anti-consumer. That's who they're protecting. They're not worried about Sony. They're not worried about Nintendo. They're worried about the consumer.
Impact the consumer.
As long as it protects the consumer, it's fine.
Yeah. So yeah, regardless of whether it's the SEC, the the EU or whoever, like all those things are all being fought out in court, countersuits and discoveries and all those things. So there is a potential that we'll get a lot of insight to see what Sony actually pays to keep games off of the Xbox, which is actively what they do. Sony puts a lot of money into keeping games off of the Xbox platform, and that information is all being submitted to them as well. So there could be good things for us as consumers, coming out of the pipe. My thing is like, I don't want to see Microsoft take games off of PlayStation. I'd rather everybody just publish everywhere. But I know that
ZeniMax, they've been true to everything they said was true. Like everything that they said publicly has been what they've done to this point.
Yeah, I'd still like to see Starfield.
Brand new IP, we're not sure on, but any existing IP that has been cross-platform will remain cross-platform, and that has been true.
I still like to see Starfield make its way over to PlayStation, and I'm fine if Microsoft wanted to hold that off for a year. I think that's ultimately would be better for the overall consumer. I get it from a single-player game. You want to have your exclusive, get this thing over here first. But I think at the end of the day, when we're thinking about consumers, like I think it should all be about your choice. Like, what console do you like? In a multiplayer game, having that exclusive to a console is the death of the multiplayer game, because you're competing against much bigger communities and much bigger, draws. So it just does not seem to make sense. And Diablo 4 is a great case. Multiplayer game, cross-platform, play it wherever, and if it ends up coming to like GeForce Now, I think that'd be a real big win for gamers in the long run. Just having that other, that other option, whether you want to go through Xbox or whatever cloud platform you prefer.
As long as we live in a world where major AAA publishers are allowing things to be third-party exclusives, I have trouble having any opinion on first-party exclusive and how they're handled.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like when we live in a world that companies that have plenty of money to put out their own games are taking checks to keep this off of certain platforms. So Final Fantasy 16 never, ever, ever comes to the Xbox. Like, that's way more egregious to me than anything that has been acquired by Sony and Microsoft not making the jump.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, because it's like now you have to sit down and try to avoid spoilers. Imagine like, hey, we're going to release this, this piece of content and only to, select people, but don't spoil it for anybody. Like, all right. And then now, because also, especially when it comes down to it, now as a general community, the general rule is at some point, like, it's your fault for going on the internet. Like, all right, within 1 or 2 weeks, like, we could all have this agreed hush thing.
Yes.
But then,
yes. If The Wire is spoiled for you this week because sadly Lance Reddick has passed, and then you are like, I'm gonna go watch something I've never watched, that's not anybody's fault. But you're like, The Wire. The Wire, I don't even think comes in like standard 16:9. Like The Wire is very old. But if John Wick 4 is spoiled, that's different. So like, I don't know where the line is, but it's somewhere between in theaters and, wow, is that really Idris Elba? He's so young.